welcome to On the Middle East, al-Monitor's podcast on the big stories in the region. My name is Amran Zaman, and today I'll be discussing Syria's return to the Arab League. The country's strongman, Bashar al-Assad, will take his seat alongside fellow Arab leaders in the coastal city of Jeddah in Saudi Arabia on Friday, after more than 13 years of isolation, over his brutal suppression of the 2011 uprising, which descended into civil war. Millions were displaced, and thousands of Syrian civilians were killed and tortured by regime forces. There are few signs that Assad is willing to change. However, several Arab nations have decided to mend ties with the Syrian leader in a bid to counter Iran's growing influence in the country. So what does this mean for Syria's Kurds, who chose what they called a third way and refused to fight the regime, focusing instead on building their own autonomous administration in North and East Syria, that is known as ANES for short? The Kurds enjoy military protection from some 900 US special forces stationed in their region, but for how long? With that in mind, the ANES has reached out to Damascus in the hopes of cutting a deal. With us here today to discuss these developments is Salih Muslim, the co-chair of the Democratic Unity Party, which shares power in the Kurdish-led entity. So welcome to our program, Mr. Muslim. It's great to have you back here again.
Hello, regards to all of you and all your followers and listeners. Thank you very much.
So tomorrow is a big day for Syria, well, at least for a part of Syria, the regime-held Syria, because Bashar al-Assad is being formally accepted back into the Arab League. What does this mean for the Kurds in northeast Syria and the broader region that's under the ANES control?
Of course, we are also following what's going on around, and especially between the Syrian regime and the Arab countries. We are not bothered from the Arab relations with the regime at all. Opposite of that, I mean, from the beginning of Syrian conflict, we tried to take the Syrian issue to the Arab League, but we failed. We couldn't do it because of the regime didn't accept it, and the opposition also refused to do so. But now, after 12 years of this killing and destroying Syria, they will come to the Arabs. I think it will be better, but it shouldn't be without any conditions. There should be some conditions, at least, I mean, to ask the regime to respect the Syrian people and the Syrian, people with their ethnically and the believers and all the Syrian components to be accepted. I mean, otherwise, it wouldn't help anything. But for this meeting, it means, I think, if we think in the other way, I mean, from the Arab views, from the beginning, all these countries, they were against the Syrian regime, and they left the Syrian regime alone. So there was kind of a vacuum which benefited. Iran has benefited from it, and the Turkey and the others, but the Arabs were away. At the last, I mean, they found that it's not good for them, I mean, to leave Syria with the other's hand. So they should do something. And the beginning is to make the relations between the Arab countries and the Arab League with the Syrian regime, so maybe they can be helpful. And I think this is the right way to do it. From our side, I mean, the administration here, democratic administration in northeast of Syria, they issued, a statement saying that they welcomed, this step for Syria. But of course, I mean, also they asked for the Arab countries and the Arab League to ask the regime or to put the conditions for democracy and freedom and to respect the Syrian people. So I think if they do it, it will be okay. So it depends on how they are going to deal with the Syrian regime from now on, I mean.
Right, but I mean, politically, they've already taken that step. He's back in the league without him having made practically, well, he's made no changes whatsoever. And you have recently put out a declaration outlining how there can be peace between the northeast Syria and the regime, and citing several conditions for such a peace to be achieved. And have you had any kind of response to that declaration so far from the Syrian regime or from any of the Arab League countries that have been pushing for a reconciliation with Syria for that matter?
Well, actually, officially, we didn't receive any response to our declaration, but we reached to all of them. I mean, even the people in the Arab League and all the countries and all the Arab countries. I mean, we are sure. I mean, they have received it, and also for the regime, they have received it. Within Syria, we received the answers from many political parties, from the opposition, and which some of them are still living in the regime areas, and the others even from outside. So they welcome such step, I mean, for this declaration. But we need, I mean, this is not enough, of course. I mean, we are still contacting them because when we issued, I mean, this declaration, it wouldn't such accept or not accept, not like that. Is that open the door for any discussions, any dialogue for all the sides. And we are still doing so. I mean, in any platforms in Europe and even in Syria and internally with our people, we are discussing it, and everybody looks it's a positive step. But as a result, till now we didn't have any, I mean, official response to it from the regime or from the others. But I think this is not the way, I mean, to have the response directly. It should be matter for discussion in some conferences or some platforms, political platforms, I mean, to be discussed and agreed or not. Maybe because we have many platforms in Europe and so such the opposition, democratic opposition and so. And I think this is open the way for discussion over there. It will be a good step if they discuss it, and they, at that time, maybe they can issue, I mean, statements about it. So it's a kind of way to make a pressure on the Syrian regime and on all the sides involved in the Syrian issue.
But of course, you have some leverage. I mean, well, first of all, you've been controlling a large portion of Syria that contains most of its strategic economic assets. The oil, the cash crops are all grown in the areas under your control. And of course, the regime is in desperate financial straits. So, you know, the fact that you have control over these resources gives you leverage, as I said, and all the more so because you have US forces stationed in your area who provide you with military protection. Do you feel that you can use that leverage effectively to get some kind of an agreement with the regime, to get some concessions, and that in that respect, you will get the backing of some of these key Arab actors like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt?
Well, we are ready to discuss it. I mean, even for this, I mean, the oil and other things in our area, we said it's for all the Syrian people. But it should, how you can, I mean, distribute all this for all the Syrians. It should be a matter of discussion. I mean, we should find a way to reach to everywhere, to let everybody to get benefit from what we have in hand. And also we should benefit from the other areas. So it needs sitting and discussing and dialogue. Maybe we can find a result for that. We cannot tell the regime to come and control everything without as nothing happened. And nobody can enforce us to do it also, because we know what happened before. It wasn't equally and it wasn't fair, for all the Syrians. A regime was controlling maybe this oil for decades, and nobody knew where it's going. At least, we should get benefit from what we have in our land, in our areas, and from the other sides also. So this is a discussable matter. So it's not, I think, maybe black or white. No, we can discuss it with everybody, even with the United Nations, if they want to find a fair solution.
Part of the problem, though, is that, on the one hand, the United States has been encouraging you to come to some kind of an agreement with the regime, yet at the same time publicly says it's opposed to engagement with the Syrian regime. We just saw the Congress pass an amendment, rather, sort of again underlining their opposition to any kind of dealings with the regime and, pressing for more sanctions. So how do you square that circle? Because on the one hand, the Americans give you protection. On the other hand, they are not apparently interested in engaging with you politically. They say, don't deal with the regime, but then privately they say, get what you can out of them. Isn't that all a bit confusing? And how do you sort of manage that situation?
Well, I think this is different things. Now why United States is here is, of course, United States is a part of the international coalition against Daesh. So this is the point, one point, and we are still doing that. We are fighting against Daesh together. We are partners for this thing. But the others, what we are trying to do, and even in the past, there were some contacts with the regime. It came in the frame of the 2254, which is the international or United Nations decision. So resolution. It's according to that. Is that in that frame? And United States and even the coalition forces, nobody tried to affect us to say you are doing so and so. To detect us what to do. They never done it. Because it's we are moving within this. The international. Resolution 2254, and we are trying to find solution. And our discussions with the regime and with the other sides, all in this, this frame. So it's something different. Fighting the terrorism together, partnership for fighting Daesh is something. But for the solution and looking for the solution and attempt to find a solution in Syria within the United Nations resolution is something different, I think.
But the other problem, of course, is that now that he's back in the Arab League, Assad is feeling even stronger and probably even less inclined to make any concessions. How do you deal with that situation?
Well, there are 2 points. One of them, this Arab League is established since 1946. They never solved any issues for the Arab world since then. This is one. And the second thing, there are even, because there are a lot of issues, not only the Syrian issue. We had, Libyan issue, we had the Yemeni issue, we had Lebanese issue, and the Syrian issue is one of them. It's like it's not enough. Now we have a Sudanese issue too. So this is the problem. So the miserable Arab League, which issue is going to solve? So maybe they wouldn't be effective even for the Syrian resolution. But it's keep the way to be helpful. I mean, some Arab countries, I mean, like Emirates and Jordanians and so, maybe they can be helpful with the Syrian people. I mean, including this administration to do something. And we are not against them. I mean, we are trying, I mean, especially, I mean, for these tribes, Arab tribes, which we are living together and so. I think it's the way to have, even for the Arab, I mean, uh, people, I mean, in those countries, alongside with us to be helpful for find a solution. I mean, for the regime. So we still believe, I mean, the Syrian regime or the Ba'athist regime is not representing all the Syrians. And this is how the Arab looks into the issue. But because of their relations, they didn't have official relation with the regime. They couldn't even contact the Syrian people. But now is the door open for them to contact them, and we will be helpful for that. Instead of Turkey and Iran and the others to be involved in the Syrian regime. So we are ready to discuss it with the Arab world, with the Arab, which they understand, I mean, us very well, and we understand each other, I mean. So I think there is not against any democratic solution in Syria.
This brings me to the other point. You mentioned that, you know, the riches that you control, the resources belong to all of the Syrian people. Now, there's a part of Syria that's also under the control of the Sunni rebel groups, much of which is also occupied by Turkey. And these groups are extremely hostile to your administration and, in fact, are fighting the SDF and helping Turkey sort of launch its attacks against you. How do you deal with that? Because after all, if you're going to have peace in Syria, obviously it has to be with all the components. And we know that Turkey is extremely hostile to your administration. At the same time, we know that the Russians in particular, and perhaps to some extent the Emiratis, are pushing for reconciliation between Assad and Turkey. And we've had all these meetings between defense ministers, foreign ministers, and possibly after the elections in Turkey between Assad and Erdogan. How do you deal with that?
Well, I think if we can ensure the Turkish withdrawal from these areas, everything will be all right. I mean, there will be no problem to find a solution with the other groups. Even, I mean, we know, I mean, the groups are located in this area you are talking about. Most of them are remains of Daesh and remains of al-Nusra and al-Qaeda and so. But they cannot do anything without the help and the protection from Turkey. Turkey is trying to feed them, to power them, to give them, weaponize them, and to use them for its purposes. And one of these purposes is to attack the Kurdish area to make the demographic changes and so on. And I think even the relations with the Arab countries will be helpful for this matter also. Maybe they can tell Turkey to withdraw their troops from these areas.
When you say we can be helpful, do you mean that you could even deploy your forces against those groups? Notably, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which is the most powerful, the most influential, I guess, group in that area, who's proved to be extremely resilient. Do you foresee a role for yourselves militarily against those groups in conjunction with Syrian Arab army forces and probably Russian forces as well?
But still, I mean, our forces are defense forces. We can defend our community and our people and the Kurdish areas where they are. And even for democratic Syrian forces, there are defense units, there are defense forces, not attacking forces to anybody. But if they try to attack our areas, of course, we will defend ourselves. I think, there will not be any agreement with Daesh remains, for example, and for Nusra remains, because all of them, they have attacked our areas before to go to those areas under the protection of Turkey. They were fighting in our areas. They fought in Kamishli, they fought in Deir ez-Zor, in Raqqa, in Kobani before Daesh, and then Daesh came and fought. Also, they fought, and all remains of those, which we call them mercenaries of Turkey, and now they are collected in that areas. So I think this should be solved also. If Turkey withdraw, maybe they should think what to do with those. To take them with them, or to leave them, or de-weaponize them. Take the weapons from them. And I think at the end they are Syrians. Maybe if there is no effect by Turkey and no maybe Turkish help, there wouldn't be any fight. But if they try to attack our areas by Turkey or by the others, at that time we will defend ourselves, I think.
Well, Turkey just had an election and President Erdogan won in the first round, and a lot of people seem to think that he will probably prevail in the second round in May 28th. Now, that's obviously bad news for Rojava, correct? And it lessens the probability of a Turkish withdrawal, correct? And increases the probability of further attacks against Rojava, right?
Well, it's not only bad for Rojava. I think it's bad for everybody in the Middle East and all the people. As you know, Turkey has, lost everything. Economically, politically, diplomatically, with the others, and even in the social life in Turkey, and everything is destroyed. And the cause is this regime, because they are insisting on the war to fight everywhere, and especially against the Kurdish people. So it doesn't mean, it's a bad news for the Kurdish people. The Kurdish people, they used, to fight, and they are fighting since years. Especially from 8 years till now, which 2016 till now in Rojava. We are trying to fight Turkish, sometimes directly, sometimes, by their, mercenaries and so. But this fight is harming everybody, especially for the Turkish people. And politically, for the Syrians, for the United Nations, and for everybody. Just because what he's trying to protect or defending, the Taliban mentality, the Daesh mentality, what he's doing. Look at the propaganda, what he was doing during the elections. Don't forget, the Turkish troops, they are in Azerbaijan, they are in Libya, they are in Somalia, they are everywhere, spread around. And I think the big dangerous by this mentality by Erdogan is on the European countries. So I think it's a disaster for everybody. I think it's not only for the Kurdish people or Rojava alone.
Your border with Iraqi Kurdistan has remained sealed. What is the reason for that? And what impact is this closure having? And do you have any sense of when the border may be reopened? And do you see a connection between that closure and the elections in Turkey?
Well, I think so, because of their relations with the Turkey. Maybe they try to make themselves, more sincere with the Turkey, to show them you are pressurizing, we are pressurizing, and maybe the reasons. It couldn't be justified. To keep the civilians. To go through this border for the hospitals and even injured people during the fighting and so, and to cut all the, this matters for Syrian people. Sugar, rice, and whatever it is. A daily needs for the people. So it's not fair. If we are talking about the maybe PYD and so members to go and come, already, I mean, they were doing it since maybe 2, 3 years. They are not allowing anybody from us to go through, I mean, KRG to Europe or to come. They don't allow them. So it's not a matter of us. It's a matter of the civilians. So they are mean they are punishing all these people. I mean, and not only the Kurdish people, the Arabs and the other, I mean, components living with us, because now everybody is affected.
But at the same time, we're hearing that one of the reasons is that you did not allow members of the Kurdish opposition, the KNC, to travel to Iraqi Kurdistan for an event in Barzan, the opening of a museum by Masoud Barzani, and that this was retaliation for that action. Is there any truth to that?
Well, I don't know really, because this is a kind of excuse, because even before, I mean, the administration sometimes they allow, they don't allow, it's something different. But what we were asking from the beginning to keep this gate or this pass, I mean, between us and them without any political reasons. I mean, to get away from the politics. I mean, it's just because it's humanitarian case.
Are you concerned that this border closure may also be connected to a possible Turkish attack, that they're getting all the NGOs, all the foreigners out in advance of another attack on Rojava?
Well, we are not, but it's I mean, we have a right to think in this way, because even the attacks before the attack starts, they closed all these gates, and even from the Syrian regime side, and we now are facing the same situation, because the Syrian border also with our areas was closed, I mean, time ago. So we don't know, and spears, I mean, as you know, I mean, some parts of Aleppo and so with the Kurdish located area, they are under the siege by the regime also. So there are pressure from two sides, from the Syrian regime one side and from the Turkish from the other side, KRG from the in this gate. So pressure from everywhere.
Well, hopefully the pressure will ease soon. Thank you very much for being with us here today, and hope to see you soon again in Rojava when the border opens.
Thank you. Thank you. The last word, I think, we have nothing to do other than to defend our dignity. That's all what we can say. Thank you very much for you.
Thank you. And this brings us to the end of this week's On the Middle East. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Salih Muslim, and I do apologize for the quality of the sound, but the internet isn't working all that well in northeast Syria, and I'm sure you can imagine why. It's a conflict zone. Do join us again in our next On the Middle East podcast. Until then, thank you and goodbye.